My family skipped my graduation to fund my sister's dream. So I audited their love. Backstage at Stanford Medical School, the air felt like a hospital hallway, clean, cold, and too bright. Around me, other graduates fixed their crimson hoods and tried to breathe through the nerves. I should have been smiling. I should have been texting friends. Instead, I checked my phone one last time, not for good luck, but because old habits die slowly. A message popped up from Darla. We can't make it. Flights to California got too expensive after paying for Bria's trip to Milan. Enjoy your day. I read it twice. It didn't stab me the way people think betrayal should. Pain needs surprise. This was not surprise. This was a receipt. I looked toward the front row where I had reserved 3 seats. They were easy to spot because they were empty. 3 clean gaps in a sea of proud faces. Empty chairs for empty promises. I didn't cry. My throat didn't tighten. What I felt was simpler and colder, like a clear glass of water after years of sugar. I typed one line back. Enjoy the investment. Then I locked my phone, smoothed my gown, and walked toward the stage lights. Have you ever realized you were the only one paying into a relationship? If yes, you already know what that moment feels like. To understand why I stayed calm, you have to understand the math of my life. In my home, love was measured like a budget. Not warm. Not gentle. Just numbers. Darla and Glenn didn't talk about support. They talked about potential. And in their minds, my younger sibling Bria was the big bet, the shiny thing that could make them look important. Bria was 23. Pretty. Loud. Always, almost discovered. She called herself a lifestyle creator. She posted photos, branded outfits, and captions about hustle. She was always on the verge of something, but the verge never became real. I was 26. Quiet. Boring, if you ask them. The one who studied. The one who worked. The one who solved problems without applause. While I worked night shifts in a pathology lab to cover my own tuition, I ate noodles from a cup and drove a car with a warning light that had basically become part of the dashboard design. Meanwhile, Darla and Glenn poured money into Bria's dream like it was a slot machine that had to pay out eventually. I knew the numbers because I lived inside them. $3,700 for professional camera gear because Bria said her phone was holding her back. $9,200 for network trips to Los Angeles and New York that produced nothing but selfies and a bigger credit card bill. And now $21,500 for Milan Fashion Week, hotel, flights, outfits, and a content team that looked suspiciously like 2 friends with free time. They called it an investment in her brand. I called it what it was, a donation to a fantasy. But the number that sat in my stomach like a stone wasn't about Bria. It was $18,400. 3 years ago, right before I started residency, Glenn called me in a panic. He said the roof was leaking. He said there was mold. He said the house might be condemned if they didn't fix it fast. His voice shook in that way that makes you feel cruel for hesitating. He asked for $18,400. I emptied my savings. Every dollar I had scraped together from tutoring and lab work. Money I had planned to use for board prep and moving costs. I wired it the same day. It's just a loan, he said, sounding grateful. We'll pay you back when the tax refund comes in. I never saw a cent return. Every time I asked, there was a new excuse. The market. The car. A surprise expense. And always, somehow, Bria needed something urgent, new headshots, a manager, a flight, a dress. Standing behind the curtain at my graduation, staring at those empty seats, the truth finally settled without drama. They didn't lack money to show up for me. They lacked interest. Bria was public. Shiny. Easy to show off. If she made it, they could claim they helped build her. They loved the idea of her. I was different. I was a tool. Useful like power in the wall. You don't clap for electricity. You only notice it when it's gone. I was their steady resource. And resources aren't celebrated. They're extracted. My name was called. I walked to the podium. The microphone gleamed under the lights. I looked out at families holding flowers, partners waving, friends filming with proud shaky hands. Then I looked again at those 3 empty seats in the front row. I stepped down from the stage for a moment. From my bag, I pulled out my white coat. It was embroidered with my name. Dr. Marin Holt. I had planned to wear it later. Private moment. Quiet pride. Instead, I walked to the front row and draped the coat over the center empty chair like it belonged to someone who showed up. Then I placed a single sunflower on top of it. A simple flower that turns toward light even when the soil is hard. The room went silent in a way that made people lean forward. I returned to the mic. I didn't open my prepared notes. My speech today was supposed to be about medicine, I said, voice steady. But I want to talk about something else. I paused long enough to let the silence work. Return on investment. A few heads tilted. A few people smiled like they thought I was joking. We're taught that if we work hard and do the right thing, love will come back to us, I continued. But sometimes the people who should be in your front row are busy funding someone else's fantasy. I looked straight into the camera that was live streaming. To anyone who has been the fixer. The bank. The quiet support system while someone else gets the spotlight, stop. The words came out clean, like I had been saving them for years. Stop investing in people who treat you like a resource instead of a person. Stop waiting for a return that never arrives. My hands didn't shake. Today I'm graduating at the top of my class. And I'm doing it without the people who were supposed to care most. I took one breath. And that is okay, because I am my own best investment. For one heartbeat, there was no sound. Then applause hit like thunder. People stood. I saw tears. I saw nods. I saw strangers looking at me like they recognized their own story in mine. When I walked off stage, my phone was already buzzing in my pocket. I didn't look yet. Not then. I wanted to keep one moment untouched before the world tried to pull it apart. But by the time I reached the hallway, a classmate grabbed my sleeve and whispered, wide-eyed, Marin, you're all over TikTok. That's when I knew the empty chairs were about to become everyone's business. By the time I reached the hallway, my phone was buzzing like it might crack in half. I didn't open it right away. I wanted one clean minute. One breath where the day stayed mine. That minute didn't last. A classmate jogged up beside me, eyes wide. Marin, you're everywhere. Everywhere where? I asked, even though I already knew. She turned her screen toward me. It was the clip of me laying my white coat on the empty chair. The sunflower. The quiet pause. The words return on investment. Someone had added text over the video. Reserved seats are for people who show up. The view count climbed so fast it looked fake. Comments rolled in like a storm. I felt this in my bones. I'm the responsible one too. She didn't beg. She just leveled up. I stared at it, feeling something I didn't expect. Not pride. Not revenge. Relief. Because it wasn't just me seeing the pattern anymore. Other people saw it too. And once a pattern is visible, it's harder to gaslight someone into thinking it's all in their head. When I finally checked my own notifications, the first message was from my father Darla. How could you do this to Bria? Sponsors are asking questions. Take it down. Then another. You made us look terrible. We did the best we could. You're being dramatic. Then a voice note from Bria, my older sibling, the one they always bet on. Her voice sounded shaky, but the anger underneath was sharp and clean. You ruined Milan. People are commenting on my posts asking why I'm here while you're alone. Brands are asking if I'm lying. You always do this, Marin. You always make things about you. I stood in the corridor in my cap and gown, surrounded by happy noise, and I realized something that should have hurt more than it did. They weren't upset that they missed my graduation. They were upset that the world noticed. That night, I went home to my tiny apartment. The one bedroom with the thin walls and the loud radiator. The one I kept because it was cheap and close to the hospital. I placed the sunflower in a glass on my dresser. It leaned a little, tired from the day, but it still faced the window. Then I set my phone face down. I did not argue. I did not apologize. I did not explain myself to people who didn't listen anyway. Instead, I took screenshots. Every text. Every demand. Every sentence that proved they cared more about image than truth. The old Marin would have panicked. She would have tried to smooth it over. She would have posted a clarification and blamed stress and said, I love my family, we're fine. But that version of me had graduated today. The woman in my apartment was still tired, still human, still sore from years of carrying things alone, yet something inside her had changed shape. I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found the one person who always spoke like facts mattered. Uncle Win. Win was my father Darla's brother. They shared blood but not character. Win worked as a forensic accountant. The kind of person who saw right through pretty stories. He was the only one who mailed me a card for graduation. No big speech. Just one sentence inside. Proud of you. Keep going. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. Marin, he said. I saw the speech. There was a short pause. Good, he added. About time. My throat tightened, not from sadness, but from the shock of being understood. I need a favor, I said. Name it. 3 years ago, I wired Darla and Glenn $18,400. They said it was for emergency roof repairs. They signed a note. They never paid it back. Wynne didn't sound surprised. You want to know where it went? Yes, I said. I want to know the truth. Send me what you have, he replied. The note, the bank transfer, anything. I'll start tonight. When I hung up, I didn't feel guilty. I felt steady. They wanted to talk about money when it benefited them. Fine. We could talk about money. But this time, we were using receipts, not feelings. 2 days later, Wynne called again. His voice was calm, but there was an edge under it. You sitting down? I am. I dug into public records, and I pulled what I could about the custodial account your grandmother set up. My stomach turned. That account? The one you were told was lost in the 2008 crash, he said. Yeah, I whispered. That's why I took out loans. It wasn't lost, Wynne said. It moved. I sat very still. Moved where? To a travel agency in New York, he said, and a luxury hotel in Milan. My apartment suddenly felt too small, like the air had been stolen out of it. I blinked hard. How much? Wynne read it out like he was reading a weather report. $21,500. Transfer cleared 3 weeks ago. My hands went cold. That wasn't neglect. That wasn't we're doing our best. That was taking money that was meant for my education and using it to fund Bria's trip. I thought about the nights I fell asleep on textbooks. The weekends I worked instead of resting. The meals I skipped so I could pay a fee on time. And then I pictured Bria in Milan, taking photos of fancy coffee and calling it work. Are you sure? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I have the receipts, Wynne said. Transaction records. Dates. Vendor names. Marin, this is theft. My chest felt tight, but my mind stayed clear. I looked at the sunflower on the dresser. It drooped a bit more now, but it was still bright. Still stubborn. What do you want to do? Wynne asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I didn't threaten. I just said the truth. I want it back, I said. All of it. That evening, I sent a single message to Darla and Glenn. Zoom. 7 p.m. We need to talk. I didn't ask. I didn't soften it. They joined immediately, probably thinking I was finally going to fold. At 7 o'clock sharp, their faces appeared on my screen. Darla wore the worried parent mask. Glenn looked annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. And Bria sat between them, holding a tissue like it was part of the performance. Darla started first. Thank goodness. We've been so worried. Do you understand what you've done to Bria's image? Bria jumped in fast. You need to post an apology. Say you were emotional. Say we supported you. Glenn grunted. Fix it. I watched them talk over each other, like my graduation was a problem they had to manage. Then I spoke. I'm not taking the video down, I said calmly. Silence. And I'm not apologizing. Glenn's eyes narrowed. Then why are we here? Because we need to discuss a transfer, I said. A transfer of $21,500 from the custodial account meant for my education. Darla's face drained of color so quickly it was almost impressive. Bria blinked. What are you talking about? Your Milan trip, I said. It wasn't funded by their savings. It was funded by money that was set aside for me. Glenn's mouth opened, then closed. Darla forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marin, that's a misunderstanding. I leaned closer to the camera, voice steady. No, I said. That's a paper trail. The silence on the screen stretched so long I could hear my own breathing. Darla was the first to recover. She leaned forward, hands clasped, voice soft and practiced. The same voice she used when she wanted sympathy from neighbors or forgiveness from relatives. Marin, honey, she said, you're confused. That account was family money. We only moved it temporarily. Temporary, I repeated. 3 weeks ago. To a travel agency. And a hotel in Milan. Bria turned to them sharply. What is she talking about? Glenn rubbed his face, irritation flashing for just a second before he hit it. This is not the time for this, he said. You're emotional. Graduation stress does that. I felt something settle in my chest, not anger, not sadness. Certainty. I worked night shifts for 4 years, I said. I took loans because you told me that money was gone. You looked me in the eye and said it was lost. Darla's voice rose. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you everything. You gave me a roof, I replied. I paid for the rest. Bria laughed once, sharp and nervous. This is insane. You're really doing this? Over money? It's not over money, I said. It's over truth. Glenn leaned closer to the camera. You think you're so smart now because you went viral? Don't forget who helped you get here. I didn't flinch. You didn't help me. You used me. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. Darla's eyes filled with tears, fast and dramatic. We were going to put it back, she whispered. After Milan. It was an investment in Bria's future. And what about mine? I asked. No one answered. I shared my screen. Wynne had sent everything in a neat folder. Dates. Amounts. Account numbers. No emotion. Just facts. This is embezzlement, I said. And because I'm the beneficiary, it's theft. Bria's face twisted. You wouldn't, she said. You're not like that. I'm exactly like that, I replied. I'm done pretending this is normal. Darla's tone hardened. You owe us loyalty. I owe you nothing, I said calmly. And here is what's going to happen. Their eyes locked on the screen. You will transfer ownership of grandmother's rental property in Ohio to me, I said. Today. You will cover the legal fees. And you will repay the remaining balance. Glenn slammed his hand on the table. That's our retirement. You took my future, I said. I'm balancing the books. Bria started crying for real this time. You're ruining everything. You ruined it when you spent money that wasn't yours, I replied. Darla shook her head, desperate. We're family. Family doesn't steal, I said. They argued. They threatened. They tried guilt, then anger, then fear. I stayed still. Then something unexpected happened. From their living room, a television voice cut through the noise. And in other news, the anchor said, Dr. Marin Hale, whose graduation speech went viral this week, has been awarded the Meridian Medical Grant. The $420,000 award will fund her research into autoimmune diagnostics. The room on their side went silent. All three of them turned toward the TV. Then back to me. I watched the calculation happen in real time. Darla's tears stopped instantly. Glenn's posture changed. Bria's crying slowed. Marin, Darla said softly, we didn't know. This changes things. It made me nauseous. No, I said. It changes nothing. Glenn tried again. We can work this out. You have 1 hour, I said. The deed, or I go to the authorities. I ended the call. I sat alone in my apartment, heart pounding but hands steady. I had expected guilt. I felt none. 47 minutes later, an email arrived. Attached, a signed deed transfer. No apology. No message. Just paperwork. I forwarded it to Wynne. It's done, I typed. His reply came quickly. Good. I'll file it. You did the right thing. 2 months later, I sold the property. I didn't keep the money. I created the Empty Chair Fund, scholarships for students who excelled without support, the ones who paid their own way while someone else got the applause. I blocked Darla, Glenn, and Bria everywhere. 6 months passed. My new apartment had more light. My research was moving fast. The sunflower from graduation was pressed and framed on my desk. One evening, I turned on my camera one last time. To anyone who has ever been the backup plan, I said, the quiet one, the reliable one, stop pouring into people who see you as a resource. Build your own seat. I ended the recording. Outside, the city lights flickered on. I was alone. And for the first time, I felt free. Freedom didn't arrive like fireworks. It arrived like quiet. The first week after the deed transfer, nothing dramatic happened. No police. No public apology. No sudden understanding. Just absence. My phone stopped lighting up with guilt disguised as concern. The silence felt unfamiliar, like stepping into a room after a generator shuts off and realizing how loud the hum had been all along. I went back to work. The lab was the same, cold lights, stainless steel surfaces, the steady rhythm of purpose. But I wasn't. I stood differently. I spoke without rehearsing apologies in my head. When a senior resident interrupted me during rounds, I didn't shrink. I waited. Then I finished my sentence. People noticed. Not in applause, but in small recalibrations. Colleagues asked for my opinion and actually waited for the answer. My supervisor started CCing me directly instead of through 3 layers of hierarchy. It was subtle, but it was real. When you stop volunteering yourself as expendable, the world adjusts. The video kept moving. Clips of the graduation speech were stitched with captions like, "The empty chair," and "Stop funding people who skip your life." Messages poured in from strangers, students, nurses, engineers, teachers, people who had been paying emotional tuition for families who never showed up. I read every message once. I didn't respond to most. Validation is addictive if you let it be. 2 weeks later, the first email from Darla arrived. It came through the emergency address I checked once a month. The subject line read, "We need to talk." I didn't open it. 3 days after that, Glenn tried a different approach. A certified letter arrived at my door. Inside was a single-page note written like a legal memo, calm and impersonal. "We believe there has been a misunderstanding regarding the Ohio property. We are willing to discuss a revised arrangement for shared benefit." Shared benefit. I recycled it. What surprised me wasn't their persistence. It was how quickly they reframed themselves as negotiators instead of offenders. People who have always extracted value don't understand boundaries. They interpret them as opening bids. Bria went another route. She posted. A carefully filtered video appeared on her social feed. Red eyes. Soft lighting. A caption about family conflict and jealousy disguised as independence. She never said my name. She didn't have to. Her followers filled in the blanks, some defending her, some questioning why she was in Milan while I stood alone on a stage. Her engagement dropped anyway. Brands don't like instability. They like clean narratives. Victims who can't explain spreadsheets don't test well. A month later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer. "Dr. Hale?" a woman asked. Her voice was precise, professional. "This is Lorna Keene from the Meridian Board. We'd like to invite you to present your research proposal in person." The meeting was scheduled for Chicago. I flew in on a Tuesday morning with a single carry-on and no expectation of rescue. The boardroom overlooked the river. Glass walls. Sharp lines. No sentiment. They asked about my work. I answered. They asked about the speech. I redirected. They asked how I handled pressure. "I learned early," I said, "that consistency matters more than approval." That seemed to satisfy them. When I left the building, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Win. "You should know," he said, "your parents consulted a lawyer." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. "They don't have a case," he continued. "But they might try to apply pressure through reputation. If they do, I can escalate." "Don't," I said. "Let them burn energy on nothing. Silence is expensive to fight." That night, alone in the hotel room, I opened the small box I'd carried with me since graduation. Inside was the lab coat I'd draped over the empty chair. Still crisp. Still mine. I thought about the version of myself who would have mailed it home as proof. Who would have tried one last time to earn recognition. Instead, I folded it carefully and put it back. The next morning, I walked along the river before my flight. The water moved steadily, unconcerned with applause or absence. It didn't ask permission to flow. 3 weeks later, the grant was finalized. The Empty Chair Fund received its first applications the same day. The first recipient was a first-generation student working 2 jobs and sending money home. Her essay ended with one sentence. "I learned not to ask for help because help always came with interest." I approved her scholarship without hesitation. That night, for the first time, I dreamed without anyone calling my name from another room. They didn't come back angry. They came back organized. That was the mistake. The first sign was an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Neutral subject line. Polite tone. 3 attachments. One of them carried a familiar smell even through the screen, family strategy dressed up as legality. They weren't disputing the property transfer anymore. They had pivoted. Now the story was concern. Concern about my mental state. Concern about my sudden public behavior. Concern about whether the scholarship fund was a sign of impulsive decision-making under emotional distress. They weren't trying to get money back. They were trying to regain narrative control. I forwarded the email to Win without comment. He called me 10 minutes later. They're not aiming for court, he said. They're aiming for doubt. If they can make you look unstable, they don't need to win. They just need institutions to hesitate. I won't, I said. I know, he replied. But hesitation doesn't require proof. Just discomfort. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because something old was knocking. There is a specific fear that comes from realizing people who raised you know exactly where your soft spots used to be. They don't need to invent weapons. They just reuse old ones. I didn't respond to the firm. Instead, I prepared. The next week, the Empty Chair Fund hosted its first small private reception. No press. No speeches. Just recipients, mentors, and donors in a modest hall near the university. Halfway through the evening, I felt it, the shift. The air changed. I turned and saw them. Angela. Robert. And Bria. They hadn't been invited. Angela wore soft colors, the kind meant to signal humility. Robert stood half a step behind her, eyes scanning exits. Bria looked polished, controlled, visibly angry beneath the surface. They didn't approach immediately. They waited. That was intentional too. Finally, Angela moved first. Alex, she said gently, like testing a bridge. We just wanted to support you. I looked at her the way you look at a stranger who knows your childhood nickname. This is a private event, I said evenly. Bria stepped forward. You don't get to erase us and pretend you're whole. I nodded once. I'm not pretending. Robert exhaled sharply. You've gone too far. Grants. Speeches. Making us look like villains. I tilted my head. You did that yourselves. I just stopped editing. Angela's eyes filled, not with tears, but calculation. We're worried about you, she said. This fixation, it's not healthy. I smiled then. Not sharply. Clearly. You're right, I said. Which is why I documented everything. I gestured slightly. Wynne stepped into view beside me, calm as gravity. Angela, he said. Robert. We've met. They froze. Any further attempts to interfere with Dr. Hale's professional standing, Wynne continued, will be interpreted as retaliation and escalated accordingly. Tonight is your warning. Bria laughed, brittle. You think this scares us? No, I said. I think it exhausts you. There was a pause. People nearby pretended not to listen. Everyone was listening. Angela reached for my arm. I stepped back. Alex, she whispered, voice breaking just enough. We're your family. No, I replied quietly. You're my origin. That's not the same thing. Robert looked at me then, really looked, as if searching for the version of me that would soften. He didn't find her. They left without another word. 2 days later, the firm withdrew representation. A week after that, Bria's largest sponsor announced a rebranding pause. A month later, the Empty Chair Fund expanded to 3 cities. The last message I ever received from Angela arrived 6 weeks after the reception. No threats. No guilt. Just one sentence. I don't recognize you anymore. I typed a response. That means it worked. I didn't send it. Some closures don't require witnesses. On a quiet evening, I sat at my desk reviewing applications. Another essay caught my eye. It ended with, I learned that survival taught me skills, but freedom taught me choice. I approved it. Outside, the city hummed. Not demanding. Not watching. Just existing. The last reckoning didn't arrive loudly. No courtroom. No dramatic apology. No final confrontation that could be clipped and shared. It arrived quietly, the way real endings usually do. 3 months after the gala, I received a plain envelope at my office. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper and an old key taped to it. The paper read. The storage unit is paid through the end of the month. Do what you want with it. No signature. I knew exactly what it was. The unit sat on the outskirts of town, the kind of place built for forgetting. Beige doors. Faded numbers. A keypad that beeped too loudly in the silence. I hadn't been there since I was 18, when I was told to put my childhood things somewhere safe, because the house needed space. Safe had always meant out of sight. The lock clicked open. The door groaned upward. Inside were boxes stacked with careless efficiency. My handwriting on the sides. Old, slanted, hopeful. I sat on the concrete floor and opened the first one. Awards I'd never hung. Notes I'd written to myself before exams. A cheap stethoscope from my first anatomy lab. A cardigan that still smelled faintly like library dust. Evidence of a life built quietly, without applause. At the bottom of the last box, I found something unexpected. A folder. Inside were copies of my old report cards, recommendation letters, acceptance emails. Documents I hadn't known they kept. On top was a note, written in Angela's handwriting. You were always impressive. I just didn't know what to do with that. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it finally explained everything. They hadn't ignored me because I lacked value. They ignored me because my value didn't feed their story. I left the folder in the unit. Some truths don't need to be carried forward. The Empty Chair Scholarship announced its first full cohort that fall. 20 students. First generation. No family support. Top academic performance. At the ceremony, I stood at the podium and looked out at faces that reminded me of who I might have been if someone had seen me sooner. I didn't talk about my family. I talked about boundaries. Support, I said, is not the same as attachment. Love that costs you your future is not love. It's extraction. They listened. Really listened. Afterward, a student named Rowan waited until the room cleared. I thought I was selfish for wanting more, they said quietly. Now I think I was just underfunded. I smiled. Most people are. I never heard from Bria again. I heard about her, of course. The world is small that way. Short contracts. Inconsistent income. A quiet relocation to a city where no one knew her last name. Angela and Robert sent one final message months later. Not to me, but to Win. They wanted mediation. I declined. Not out of anger. Out of completion. There is a moment, if you're lucky, when the fight ends not because you won, but because you no longer need to fight. That moment arrived one morning while I was making coffee. The sun hit the counter just right. The apartment was quiet. My calendar was full, but with work I chose, people I respected, projects that mattered. No dread. No rehearsed conversations. No emotional accounting. I realized then that peace wasn't dramatic. It was boring. And that was the point. On the anniversary of my graduation, I returned to the auditorium alone. Same seats. Same stage. I sat in the front row this time. All of it was empty. And all of it was mine. I thought about the version of myself who used to believe love had to be earned, visibility had to be begged for, and silence was the price of belonging. She did her best. I stood up, walked out, and didn't look back. Some families give you roots. Some teach you how to grow wings by forcing you to build them yourself. Both count. But only one lets you fly. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.